Full garden friends, Farisa here again from Grow Your Own. And today I wanted to talk to you about, I want to give you 5 simple tips that you can apply if you're just starting out a garden or if you've been gardening for a little while and you're somehow having a little bit of struggle with it. We've all been there. I have used these tips. They've worked for me. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. So, tip number 1, start very small. If you're just starting out, you don't want to go out and, what do I mean when I say small? You don't want to go out and buy 3 raised beds, 20 bags of soil, and any of that. It's best if you start in a small space. Container gardening might be best, or maybe 1 small raised bed. Seeds may also, a lot of people get intimidated by seeds and seed starting. I know it was a struggle also for me 12 years ago when I started gardening. You can go buy the starts, go to your nursery and buy starts. Also, if you live up north and your growing season is so much shorter, it's best if you get the little plants. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why they're there. The pre-bagged soil, you don't have to go out and start making your own compost and get a worm bin and any of that fancy stuff, or maybe less glamorous stuff. But that will come in time. You'll be amazed what you want to do and what you can accomplish with time. But when you're first starting out, you just want to start small. Buy a good compost, get a couple of containers, or a small raised bed, or just a small patch in your yard that you just dedicate to growing a couple of things, okay? So that's tip number 1, start small. Tip number 2, plant your favorites. Plant things that you use in your everyday cooking, your kitchen. If you like salads, go ahead and plant tomatoes or cucumbers, lettuce. So don't plant eggplant if you don't eat or love eggplant, okay? So just focus on the things that you use. You're going to enjoy this process a whole lot more. It's going to be extremely gratifying, I promise you. So just plant what you use. For me, when I started, it was herbs. So I love cooking with herbs. So my first set of plants were lots of herbs. And to this day, I still have a love for herbs. If I can just have 1 grouping of things to grow in my garden, I would absolutely select my herbs. I can't do without them. I think they flavor foods so well. And I just, that's where my passion is, herbs, okay? Okay, so tip number 2, plant your favorite, okay? Don't plant anything that you don't love or your family won't eat. So plant, if it's 1 or 2 things, just focus on that, okay? Gardening. Tip number 3, make it a daily routine. So when you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you blow dry your hair, you fix your hair, whatever it is. Those are all like your morning routine. You wash your face. It's the same thing. I'm not saying that it has to necessarily be in the morning. Some people just enjoy unwinding and make some time for the garden in the afternoon after work, okay? It helps me decompress a lot after, because it's very relaxing, it's very therapeutic. But when you're starting out, I'm not talking about an enormous amount of time. Let's say you plant your 2 herbs, or you plant your tomatoes and your basil because you love making pasta sauces, right? And you have to water them. You want to make sure you check on them daily. That's just going to become a part of your routine where you check on them. I call it, I have a saying, you have to inspect what you expect. So you're expecting hearty, wholesome vegetables and fruits and whatever you planted. So you have to inspect them. So that's what I do. I usually do that a couple of times a day. I obviously at this point spend a lot more time in my garden than when you're starting out. When I first started out, I didn't spend as much time, but I was very dedicated at making sure, you know, I check on my plants, I water them, I check, you know, the soil, I look for whatever may be going wrong. So you want to make sure it's a daily routine. It's something that you do. Oh, of course, if you miss a day here and there, it's not a big deal. But obviously, if you have to water them and you live in a hot climate or what's not, you know, you really don't want to do all this work and then have it, you know, die because you forgot to water it. So just make it a daily routine. It's something that you do. It will eventually in time become a natural process. So just do that. Tip number 4. Okay, so tip number 3 was make it a part of your daily routine. Okay, so tip number 4, do not, and this is very important, do not compare yourself to anyone else around you that's gardening. This is absolutely your journey, and you want to make sure that you're happy doing it. Okay, so don't compare yourself to somebody that's been gardening for 20 years, or your neighbor that just started gardening but somehow they're planting more, and you know, you plant the same plant but you harvested less than they did. And just don't do that. Don't get caught up in anyone's harvest. This is for you. This is your enjoyment. This is your process. So just focus on what you're doing, how you can improve what you're doing. There's nothing wrong if you're comparing and you want to learn, but don't get yourself to that point where you're going to get disappointed if you're not harvesting as much as somebody else, or this is with time and consistency. I promise you, you're going to get there. It's just like anything else. The more you do it, you become a natural at it, and you're going to be planting more, harvesting more. You're going to get better at what works in what area of your garden, what works in what container, what soil works best, how often you may need to fertilize something. Okay, so that's tip number 4, and that's very important. Do not compare yourself to anybody else. This is your journey, your garden, and that's just focus on what you're doing. Okay, and tip number 5, last but not least, but a very, very important, okay, probably the most, do not quit. Okay, are you listening? Do not quit. There are going to be times when I first started gardening and I would have plants would die, and it still happens now. Okay, I have things would die, insects would eat them. I mean, you go through gardening, it's really, it's a learning process, and you do pick up. I don't have stacks and stacks of gardening books. I basically am learning from experience and from growing things and experimenting and what works and doesn't work. So do not quit. There may be times you plant, you know, certain herbs and it's just, they die. You underwater, overwater, who knows, the temperature wasn't right. It just wasn't the right spot for it. It's what's important that you learn from that and move on, and just it'll get better the next time. So it's so important that you don't throw in the towel when you have, you know, mishaps or you don't get the results that you were expecting. Just try again. Go back to the drawing board, reach out to someone, and get some tips, get some garden tips, and watch some YouTube videos. Okay, so that's my 5 tips, guys. So again, we can recap. Start small. Plant your favorites only things that you're going to use. Make gardening a daily part of your routine. Okay, do not compare yourself to anyone. And 5, do not quit. Okay, do not quit. That's it, guys. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss any of my future videos. And I want to thank you so much again for joining me and watching this video, and I hope to see you again. Have a